welcome. Let's start today. And very happy to see you again. Abrazotes. Okay, let's start appreciating, remembering our teachers and our teachers' teachers and teacher of all of them, the Buddha. This kind of salutation is the traditional for the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. The teaching, the Buddha himself, the teaching, and the monastic order. Generally, we pay respect to the monks in the same way. Not because of their personality, but because of what they are represent and what they are caring and taking care of. And together we recite. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Piso bhagava araham sama sambuddho vichacharana samhano sukato rotavidu anutaro purisa dhamma sarati satta deva manusanam buddho bhagavati swakato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko ataliko ehipasiko panayiko achatam vaditavo mihiti supatipano bhagavato savakasangho Ujupatipanno bhagavato savakasambo Nyayapatipanno bhagavato savakasambo Samichipatipanno bhagavato savakasambo Yadidam chatari purisa yugam Nyata purisa pugala Esa bhagavato savakasambo Ahuneyo pahunayo Dakineyo anjali karaniyo Anukaram punyaketam lokasam
Morning, dear friends.
Good morning.
So today we are going to continue with some more mental processes. And the mental processes actually they are quite similar, but it depends on the objects and so what kind of process will happen. And it's not complicated, but it might be a little bit complex. So, but with patience, so slowly we'll go through. And as our teacher says that this is the first round, so there will be many things that we might we get this, and then in the second round we say, oh, so then we get some more. So it takes some time for the mind to digest all the information because it is a lot of information. So. Even now, when we are preparing the classes, then when I'm checking and reading and saying, I didn't remember this, and so there are always something new. So it's nice, but with patience, and we'll go through slowly. Okay, so everybody ready?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So last week we have been talking about some kind of mental process, the 5 sense door mental process. So here is a graphic. So we can understand a little bit better in a general view than what kind of mental processes there are. And so mental processes in big category, we can divide it into two groups. 5 sense door mental process, those mental process that happens when the mind gets some kind of, get in touch with some kind of object through the 5 sense doors. Like something to see, something to hear, to smell, to taste, and something to touch. So when this happened, then this kind of mental processes happen, and then there is another kind, which is mind door mental process that is about the mind. The mind doesn't have to get direct input through the 5 senses. Then last week we have seen the 5 sense door mental processes, and it's further divided into 4 groups depending on how clear the object is, or how much impact the object has to the mind. So it can be a very great object, and not a little bit less clear than this. And then we have a slight object, so not clear, and a very slight object that the mind doesn't even recognize it. Yes?
Like
Okay, then we have mind-door mental process. And the first group we have is Kamawachara, sense sphere mental process. So those mental processes are those processes that takes the sense object as object, or it can be mental processes that happens in the Kamawachara realm, meaning the sense sphere, meaning here as like human or animals or anywhere that there are senses. So this kind of mental processes is further divided into clear object or not so clear object. This is the thing that we are going to see today. And then after that, there is another group which is called Apana. Those Apana are those attainment process. So like jhana, like when a person do samatha meditation and arrive to a very high level of concentration, then jhana happens, and those moments there are jhana process which are a little bit different than the other processes. And also we have magga process. That is the process when a person gets enlightened. So when the mind is purified, and what happens in those moments. So the mental process is also a little bit different. So today I think we are going to look at this part. But before that, then we will do a very quick, just one slide revision of this one. Okay? Mm-hmm. Yes? Okay. So last week we talked about the five sense door process. Then if the object is very clear, then it will happen the usual process of starting with Bhavanga stream here and after, no? Let's just imagine the Bhavanga. Then when the object strike here is an idle process example, strike the eye sensitivity, Chakupasada, then it also strike the Bhavanga, and this Bhavanga is called past Bhavanga. Then we have vibrating Bhavanga and arresting Bhavanga, two more Bhavanga for it to slow down. Then the mind turns Panchadwara Vajanachita, five sense door averting consciousness happens. Then the mind turns to the door, and then eye consciousness in this case arise, Chaku Vinyana arise. Then receiving, investigating, determining, then jhana, then full experience of the object, active part, then tadaramana, and aftertaste, tadama, and then go back to Bhavanga stream. So that is the case when the object is very clear. Then it starts with one past Bhavanga and ends with tadaramana. Mm-hmm. Now, when the object is not so clear, what happens is that the mind needs a little bit more time to catch the object, or we can say it in another way, that the object has less impact to the mind, so it takes a little bit longer for it to impact the mind. So it takes two more past Bhavanga, one or two more past Bhavanga. Actually here there are two possibilities. So either two past Bhavanga or three past Bhavanga. Then it will end only with Javana. If the case is two past Bhavanga, then here will be one more Bhavanga, no? Because Tadaramana cannot arise. Yes?
If the mind didn't taste the object well, it cannot have an aftertaste because it was not very clear.
Mm-hmm. So that's the two possibility of when the object is not so clear. Then we come to the slight object, which is very not clear in this case. So it takes a lot of from 4 to a lot of past Bhavanga. Then the process will end only with Motavana. So the mind, in this moment, Chaku Vinyana did arise. It did see something, but it didn't react to it even because it was just so little, just like this. Yeah. Yes, so little impact that the mind.
This is like if you are sleeping and someone comes and knocks at the door, it needs to knock a lot. Dun dun dun. Hello, hey, wake up. And still not yet open. The other one, the person was just beside the door and somebody knocked and then hello. Immediately open the door of the eye in that case.
Mm-hmm. That's a good example. Okay, so in the last case, then the object is basically unconceivable by even it only shakes the mind a little bit. So there is something, but it's so weak that even eye consciousness does not arise. So it just only Bhavanga stream just only shake a little bit and it go back to Bhavanga stream again. So that's the four types of five door mental processes in comparison. Okay, Yes, so this was what we have seen last week. Until here, everything okay? Yes?
Very well. Okay.
Okay. Yes, okay. So, then you go back to Bhavanga. And then
Neutral.
neutral.
Of the mind,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So now, today we're going to go to the mind or mental process, and especially in the Kamavachara, in the sense sphere first. Okay, so in a mind or mental process, as we have seen before, because it is a mind or process, so the mind does not need to get any sense object, although it is sense object, it doesn't need to get any new sense object through the five sense door at this point, because the object is already inside the mind, yes? So that's why in this case, then the mind does not need to turn to any kind of the outside door. So Panchadwara Awajana, five sense door aversion consciousness, need not to arise in this case, not necessary. And so if it does not turn to these doors and it's not necessary, then also this also not necessary. If this is not necessary, then it does not need to receive or investigate or
There was nothing to
determine.
receive.
So also this does not need to arise. So in the case of mind or mental process,
The mind, my dear family, can remember or imagine a sound, remember or imagine a sight, remember or imagine a smell, touch, etc., etc. That's why the mind already has its own reality inside, and either it can remember something that experienced or imagine something that it may experience in the future, something like that. So in this case, when the mind is thinking, it's not really connected to the senses. They are two different: mind activity or senses feeding the mind. The mind is always working by getting information from the sense or by itself just rolling.
yeah, there will be more details coming, and because we are in mind or process today, so there will be more details. So in the usual case, so only Bhavanga stream of Bhavanga vibrating, and then the mind turns to the mind itself. Manodawara Awajana Chitta will arise here. Mind or averting consciousness, so it only turns to the mind, and then it has this reaction. Here the active part, whether he may like it, he may not like it, so it could be kusala, could be akusala, so it can happen here, then tadaramana and bhavanga. Okay, so in the case of mind or mental process, there are two big groups. The first one is called subsequent mental processes, which means those mental processes that follows the five sense or process to make sense of what was being perceived just now. Say for example, here a flower, so something we see, in the case we see. So idle mental process first arise, yes? And then with just one idle mental process, the mind does not understand or does not know that what we have seen is what it is. No, it does not really know the flower yet. So it needs some kind of mind or process after that idle process to process what the eye have seen. So those kind of mind or process is related to what we have seen just now. Yes, so after the idle process, and there are some kind of mind or process that helps the mind to understand what the object was. Clear? Yes. So fascinating. So the first group of mind or process are those that are related to the object, the present object that the mind just saw or just heard or just smelled, just taste. So we can say the process to digest what the idle process have seen. Yes, so later we will go into detail. And then the second group is called Sudha Manodwaraviti, which is pure mind or process. Those processes are those ones that does not have direct connection with what we have just seen or just heard or just taste, but it is purely, let's say, thinking, imagining, or memory, or something that
Planning.
Or planning, or anything that is not related directly to a five sense process. Okay. So two types. Okay, so now let's go to the subsequent mental processes first. So this is a little quite interesting to see how the mind understand understand what we saw, understand what we heard, smell, and things. So it needs not only one mental process, it needs more mental process. So we will see how it works. Now, we have seen that in the idle mental process, then it happens bhavanga, starting from here, bhavanga, and then it's complete the 17 moment, like what we saw last week. And the same time, the object that we are seeing also are the present object that lasts for the 17 moments. Yes. So say this object that arises impact the mind at this point, and then they run together for 17 moment, and then here the idle mental process finish, and then this present object also dissolved at this moment. Yes. Okay. So this is the first process. So taking seeing as an example. Yeah. So after the idle process passed, we will come here. So first, the eye, when we see something, when we see something, let's say the flower, we don't see the whole flower at once. We see part by part. Yeah. So now here, let's say the idle mental process, it sees something. So it takes only one part of that thing first, and then that is a present visible object. Then it runs the idle mental process together with the present visible object. Yes. Okay. So here no problem, but it's only one part of the thing, not the whole thing yet. Okay. So after this, what happened is that it happens a mindful process that hold this past visible object. So what he just seen after that process, then another only mind law process hold what he have just seen as a past visible object. Why past? Because the 17 moment is gone. What he have seen actually is dissolved already. Yes. So he took that what he's seen now by the mind. Yes. So he hold this visual object in his mind.
Just a part of the object, not yet the whole. Haven't seen it. So he relies on memory a little bit from the past. He holds it on memory. Then
and he takes So this is the first type of process that happens. Then after that, then the mind process happens again, and it takes another part of the object. Okay. So
this present visible.
this is present now. Another part of the whole object. No. So another idle process happens together with the present object again. So after this, then the mind holds the visible object again, both what he has seen before and the last. So both past visible object, the mind holds it, and then in this process it does this. It holds the past visible object. Okay. After that, another idle mental process happens, and it takes another part of the object, present visible object. And then it runs again with the visible object, present visible object, and it happens the same, and then it holds again the three objects. So how many times this process like eye and holding, idle, holding can happen depends on how much the eye can see and how much the mind can hold.
And the complexity of the object. For something we need to stay longer, and the mind is calculating. The mind is a scanner. It takes something, even to see our mother. The time we see our mother, even we have seen her for thousands of millions of times, it will scan her, and she will, then later the mind, you will see what it does. It says mama, but it will scan the whole thing, just human being, form, female, color, shape, memories, and then it says mama, how can I help you, or something like this.
Yeah. So this process sometimes, so depending on how complex the object is or how much the mind can hold, it could be, let's say, just as an example, let's say a person. So it cut the head, and then it processes the head, and then you get the body, and it processes the body, and then you get the legs, and then it processes the leg, and then you get the whole thing. No, it can be so different parts it will take. Yes. Okay. So after this holding part, what happened is that there will be another type of mental process which takes the group of objects as a whole. So what it is holding already in the mind, and it takes them together as one whole, one object. So another mental process runs doing this job. Then after that, a third kind of mental process happens. Now it takes the whole entity as an object.
Now the mind starts to understand what it saw.
Yes. So at this point, then this mental process, then a thing concept happens in the mind, and then the mind says something like something with the shape of a key. So it does not know that it is a key yet, but it sees that something that has a shape is a thing. Yeah, so a thing concept. A thing concept happens with this process. Then after that, a fourth mental process will happen, which is called taking name. And then now the name concept will happen, and then the person says, key.
It
Yes.
will go back to the sanya of previous and now this is a key. So minimum to arrive to say the name of something, if we can name something, minimum the cheapest, the mind is doing this mental process. Actually it does many times
Yeah.
this back
5
and forth.
types, no minimum. The idle process, the holding process, then the combining process, then the thing concept, like knowing that it is a thing, then the naming concept, and it names it, what it is. So minimum 5 types of process, many times. Then the mind, then at this point the mind understand what we have seen, or in the same way other senses. No, now we will also see to it. Now, okay, so in this case, the person or the mind understand that it is a key. Or sometimes this name concept can change. A person might say Yahweh, no, if he speaks Spanish, if the person. So that's the difference between name concept and thing concept. Because with the thing concept, a Spanish-speaking person or an English-speaking person, they both see the thing. So
They
that is
know
what
what
is
it
called
is.
thing concept. They both see that object, that shape, no? But the naming process can be different. That's why name is another process, because it's name concept. Somebody might call it a llave, might call it a key, might call it a kagi, or call it whatever, a language, or
Schlusle.
or you can call it saucy. So anything you can call. So this naming process is different. So but the thing concept is the same now. Yeah. So German person, Spanish
Here
person,
is
any
where the
person.
difference starts, according to our previous conditioning. But before reality, we are looking at without names. We see this without a name yet. Later on comes our reaction to it. So here is, remember, my dear family, that we are looking at the mind with the real powerful microscope. We are looking at how the mind is doing the thing, later on to react to it. First know it is, then comes the memory. Oh, I like or dislike a key. Or I lost a key, then the whole emotion and all this stuff.
Oh, where is my key?
Later on, yes. I lost the keys.
Okay, so I mean, when the third kind of process happens, then the concept happens. Because in the second type of process, it only takes the whole as an object, but it is still the visible object, no, that the mind is taking. In the third process, that it combines everything and then it sees a form, and that is already a concept actually. The mind created, combined the things as a form. So that's thing concept, and here is name concept. Okay, so
These last two are out of reality already. This is the mind doing, not really perceiving directly the real reality, but thinking about reality. That's why it's concept already. So we are already lost in all our world, our creation, the one we have created by ourselves. We are already lost in that area. It's very important to notice that we are not really in the present. We are dreaming about the present in the immediate experience. The mind is dreaming and perceiving, dreaming, perceiving, dreaming, perceiving, dreaming, perceiving.
yeah, but it is necessary, no? Otherwise, we cannot work in daily life.
Function.
Otherwise, give me some material quality to open the door, or give me some material property to, no? So it's
Give
not
me a bunch
possible.
of atoms to open the door.
Or a bunch of atoms is opening the door, or opening a bunch of atoms with a bunch of atoms. Yeah, okay, anyway, but we need those concepts also. So conventional
Very
reality.
Convenient, very convenient, but not ultimate.
Yes, yes.
I have a
Confusing.
confusion, and I would like to understand the difference between the present visible object and reality. Because if it is reality, then my concept and
Based on reality.
my ideas in my mind, they are not reality.
They are.
And mental reality,
no.
but not real reality.
Yes. Now let's take a look at this one, and then we will come to this. Yes. So here,
Eh?
How many layers of reality?
There are
there's
two
only
actually.
two.
There are only
Actually,
two
only
realities.
two.
Ultimate and conventional. There are only two. And conventional lives. The thing gets tricky because there is only one reality actually. Real reality.
Ultimate reality.
But we have the second that we impose onto reality, which is the conceptual reality. But conceptual reality is made of ultimate.
Based on.
Based on ultimate. So we can say that ultimate reality is the pot, and the water that is the pot is inside the other reality, is the conventional reality. They live together, and we need both. Because if we see only real reality, we would see just atoms and we would not recognize a person. So we need both, but we need to understand especially the ultimate reality, because in conceptual reality, any kind of ignorance, any kind of misbehavior can happen because we are not really understanding what really is. So we must align our conventional reality, both we must align them, but real reality must lead the way eventually. And that is when we get enlightened. An enlightened person sees the real reality as it is and understands that, yes, concept, I'm still a person and you are still my friend or neighbor, but it doesn't bother the stability of the mind, because that person can see the whole reality as it really is. This is the whole purpose of the whole Buddhist practice, is to see reality as it really is. The tathata is called the suchness of reality. As such it is, as such we should see it, understanding concept as on top. Suchness, the suchness of the world.
Yes, so let's go through this and then we'll come back a little bit more on the realities. And so here is a little graphic of a glance of what happens in the process, and then we'll come again. So first, the idle mental process happen taking a present visible object, which is the one that runs, those that are arising at the moment that runs together with the idle mental process, those present visible object. And then the mind or mental process take that present visible object that he saw a little while ago as its object, it holds in the mind. So here it becomes a past visible object because it is the 17 moment is gone, and then that object is past already. Yes, so it takes a past visible object as an object, the one
So the
that's
mind
just gone.
Experience, it became a past object, and the second mind looks at it based
It
on
took
this one.
that.
It's already past. It's taking this object to understand it. Then it will experience clearly again, and then another process of mind will take this past, immediate past object. So the mind is doing this experience looking, experience. It's like really like the locomotora. It really gives the experience looking, thinking, understanding, whatever comes later.
So this process will repeat itself until as much as the mind can, as much as the eye can see and the mind can hold at the moment. Then after that, another kind of mental process happens that it combines the information, all those visual information as a whole. Then the next kind of process, here it becomes a concept. Until here it's still ultimate reality.
Ultimate reality.
Because it is nama and rupa. What is ultimate reality? Remember, only four things: mind, matter, nama in two, no? Chitta and chetasikas, consciousness and mental concomitant or mental factors. So chitta, chettasika, rupa, matter, and nibbana. Yes. So only four kind of ultimate reality. No. So here until here is still ultimate reality because this is some kind of rupa, real object. No? Although it is past, it is still ultimate reality because it is really exists. No.
Matter
Really
exists. We can see
really
matter
exists.
because it exists.
So until here, until this process is still ultimate reality. Then from here on, then the thing concept happens, and here is not ultimate reality anymore because it becomes a concept. Then the mind take the whole thing as a form. So you say, this is something, a thing.
There is a thing there.
A thing
Recognize.
with the shape of that. Then after that, then another mental process, name it, name concept, a key. So that's how the mind understands what he is seeing at that point. Okay, until here.
This the mind does it billions of times per second. Even to recognize our own father, as I said, our own father or mother, even just to recognize the face, it first saw eyelashes, nose, mouth, ears, hair, human being. After human being, it will see what kind of human being, female, male, what is the relation.
More process.
A lot of process to be naming, but the mind is doing it so quickly that we are so used to it that we just live. Of course, it's just happening. But if we look at how people is designing artificial intelligence and machines themselves, that's the same way a scanner does the job. It just takes a dot and brings it to memory. It just takes another dot and brings it to the memory, the RAM memory, no, the immediate memory. It takes another, and later on, that thing is able to, what it saw, really saw from nature, it hold it onto memory and then it presented as another image, which is another concept and another
Supercomputer.
supercomputer
Yes.
for free,
Is
for
it,
free, my dear family.
Is it like animals? They don't give like they don't they are not able to give like names or concepts.
Yes.
And
Yes.
therefore they always stay in the.
Thing concept
Either.
could be.
They see only thing in concept, unless it depends on animal, because in
Chimpanzee
chimpanzees and
or
dolphins,
something,
they
only
have proven that they have some kind of way of saying that thing with a sound to relate. But yes, in general, animals will stay mostly.
Yes.
That's what makes us different as humans. This is what separates animals from humans.
Yeah.
We can know that we are knowing, and we can shape what we know, and also that brings a lot of problems as well. So that is an advantage, but also a great deal of challenge or problem.
Yes, actually here also it is coming something related to what Marcos is saying. Okay, shall we continue? Yes? Okay,
Very nice,
so
very nice.
say the eye sees something, then it does not know what it is.
What? What?
Yes? So it will, in this case, it will only stay in the thing concept because we don't know what it is. So, but we did see a thing, but we cannot name it.
It
So
feels
the
strange
mind
not
is-
to see
is
something
like-
not knowing
is
what,
like
what?
A what? So a what? So in this
The
case,
thing concept is a what?
yes. So the
Don't be funny.
thinking name process will not happen. So it will only stay in the until the third process, the thing concept.
On the
We don't
question
know
mark,
what it
it will
is.
stay in my
Yes. Yeah, so it will stay only in the
But then
thing
we try to
concept.
accommodate in something that we know.
Yes.
Some kind of a
Like-
ball or something.
That's
But
called
that's, yeah.
Stubbornness. I want to know what it is. Let's put it a name into that, yeah. No.
Okay.
Yes, but the mind stage, yeah.
Yes.
It feels
Yeah.
funny, no? Now that we were
Immediately,
looking,
no?
did you felt it now when she said that we are all taking care of the process? The mind feels somehow weird, uncomfortable, not know what the mind want, what is that? Do you think it feels something?
Yes. Okay. So let's.
So what is it?
What is it? I don't know. Actually, I was trying to. It was very funny process because in Google I was trying to find something I don't know. So
Weird.
what do I put if I don't know what it is called? Like how do I?
Show me something I don't know. Reality, boom, nibbana, boom.
You found it.
Yeah, I found something.
And how you
something.
found it? How you found it? Give me a something.
No, I don't like some.
Blob.
I don't remember what I put, but
Random
like
object.
some.
Random.
some- Yeah.
Weird stuff.
Anyway,
Show me something I don't know.
something.
Yeah,
Google
and then
something I
there
don't
is
3 billion results.
pages and pages and pages and pages and
Everything.
pages. That's a very that would be a very
Long
humbling
list.
Google experience. Show me something I don't know. Okay.
Okay, so let's see a little bit the hearing process. It's a little bit different, very similar, but it's also very interesting. So when we are listening to something, like let's say right now, you're listening to what I'm saying, so we're making sense of what we are listening, but actually in a microscopic way, what happens is that the mind doesn't take the whole thing at once, like the picture, yeah? So in this case, let's say a llave, somebody says llave, okay? So what happens here is that the ear dot process only take one syllable at a time. So it only take ya at this moment. So this something?
Actually,
Even less.
it takes and then
Even less, of
yeah, it would be smaller. Yes, yes, I
Yeah,
understand,
it's smaller, but
Which
as
become-
an example,
Okay.
to be.
It was much smaller, just
Yeah.
sound or something.
Yes. So the ear dot will happen. Ear dot process will happen taking a present audible object. Yes. So in this case, this sound also lasts the 17 moment together, and at the moment after 17 moment, it will also finish the sound. Yes. Okay. So let's say for example, we take ya in the first
First shot.
process. Then the mind, like the same as the idle process, it holds the ya in the mind as a past audible object. Then audible object, and then it takes ve, another sound.
As a reality, he's really listening the
Present.
ve.
So fast, no? It's a ya ve, actually it happens everything already, no? So another mental process happens holding the past object, and so now we have ya and we have ve, no, in the mind. And then in the next process, it again, like the idle process, it takes the whole together, ya in ve together in this process, taking it as one thing. And then the next process, what happens, that the mind said, oh, yave. So in this case, different from the idle process, name concept came first. Yes?
Not a thing.
Not the thing, because we are listening and then we know the name of this thing. Yes? So name process will happen first, and after that, now thing concept happens. After we
First what you
say
tell, then you
yave
imagine.
and then the shape of the key happens in the mind. Yes? So in the either process, it is inverted, the name process and the thing concept. Yeah? Okay, but what if a person does not understand what yave means? So in this case, the thing, yave, ¿qué es eso? No? What is that? So don't know. So in this case, the thing concept process will not happen in his mind because he don't understand the word.
If we listen in German, for example.
Yes. Yes.
Can you please tell us some which town you born in German? I mean, not just the town.
The
like
sentence, you mean?
tell the
so.
sentence, something in German, whatever in
Okay,
German.
ich bin in Berlin geboren.
Only Berlin.
Pues nomás entendió
Ich bin in Berlin geboren.
o cualquier cosa, o you charanay, something.
The mind will get something and then it will not get something.
It will be like.
Like say for example, somehow the mind understood Berlin,
Mhm.
then but all the other thing nothing, no? So the mind processed that, but not process. It didn't process all the other sound that it did
You
listen.
can say something
So
in
it was only
Chinese and
sound.
the same with
Say
something.
some, say a little poem in Chinese.
In Cantonese a poem. 床前明月光，疑是地上霜。舉頭望明月，低頭思故鄉。
Maybe.
You got the concept, the thing concept.
It was only purely ultimate reality for me. So only sound.
Nothing concept.
No concept. Yes.
No concept.
Okay, so for us to understand something, in case of sound, then we must understand the concept, the language of that in order to understand the content. So the ear dot process and the eye dot process is a little bit different in this case. Okay,
Very
So,
interesting. Very
that's how, in brief, how the mind
No?
process our
so
daily.
logical, isn't it? Sorry.
That's how the mind process our daily experience. So it seems like something very daily and something very common, and that we do it all the time. We see, we hear, we taste, and so. But actually, the mind is doing a lot of complex processes inside the mind. That how it relates our experience to what comes in from the five sense door.
Wow, that is really-
What you are saying, it means mostly knowledge. Knowledge.
No.
Not really. It's just an experience.
Oh, but if you do not know the language, then you do not know the object. You
We know the
you
object
need
as a thing.
to have knowledge to know many objects,
Mhm.
because it is like you need previous experiences, the holding of the past, in order to have the concept and then name it.
Yes.
So you need also to know the language, and
Yes.
also to have clearly in your mind the object that you are seeing.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
that's knowledge.
Yes, but it depends on until where. And also, for example, if we see something we don't know what it is, the mind still sees it, like the thing that we saw that
If
kind
it is
of
visual,
ball.
we still see, but we
still
don't know
see,
how
we
it is
just don't know
called.
what it is. But so that's until then it's an experience. But if we know how it is, and then we can name it, or that can be knowledge. But otherwise, we don't do things with baby. Apple, this is apple. No, like so it's the same thing. Like the baby learns how it is called, and the next time he.
Actually, it's both,
It's
depending
both,
where.
yeah.
What it's describing is ultimate reality, then later on the concept, yes, is based on previous experience. Then I may like the key or dislike the key, it is based on previous experience. But if I see a key for the first time, we generally will be neutral towards it. Or like a dog, if I had a bad experience with a dog, I see a dog, the mind will have such reaction, but that is happening already based on previous. So it's doing both. Ultimate reality, saw the real dog, goes back to memory, knows what it is, please look at the ultimate reality, and then later on relates to its previous knowledge. Yes, it is both happening.
You're attaching knowledge to experience. If we don't have the experience, then we don't have knowledge.
We need the experience to learn, no, probably.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But yes, as Charana said, we need to experience. Knowledge is generated. Knowledge is past experience, real experience. So actually it's the same, only related to the past. We are talking about the same thing, only that one thing already passed and is being recalled, but actually at one moment that experience was present, was real reality. How we keep it on the mind, our ability to hold it, and what prejudice do we have towards it, that's another layer of conceptuality on top of it. But everything was actually real reality. Life has always passed. Our memory of life is just a concept based on what we lived. So it is actually only experience recalled.
Now what we have seen, these 5 types of processes is only the minimum for us to know something, no? Like it passed through many times of these 5 types of processes, so many processes with these 5 types, then we know this, but then later on, surely more mental process will happen, recalling, like Bante said, recalling some past experience we have with the key, or then if it was a pleasant experience, oh how nice, and then more mental process will say I like it or I don't like it, and it's generating kusala or akusala in those wholesome or unwholesome mind state after those experiences. No? Until here it's only the purely how the mind knows something. Then after, then it will have all kinds of, depends on how the mind is, how much wisdom also, how much the quality of the mind, then other mental process will happen. So many will continue with the reaction to what we
Just
received.
really so. Someone else? Something? Tea time? Okay, Mr. Guillermo.
Well,
Not yet.
I have to process.
Not
all-
yet satisfied.
No, it's not a matter of satisfaction. It's a matter of trying to understand what is the position of the teachings that you are giving us in order to put it in between Plato and Aristoteles.
Oh, you will get into
Okay.
trouble.
Yes.
You better look at this as it
I'm
is.
having that
And
problem.
put things beside. Otherwise, if you want to bring a round thing into a square thing, or a round thing into a triangle, you will have a problem.
Might not fit.
We better appreciate the triangle as it is, and we better appreciate the circle as it is. Otherwise, that will be very tiring. And I think personally, this is a personal thought. I think we need all that energy that we are trying to accommodate this onto our previous conditioning. I think we need all that energy to focus on what is coming. We will need all that energy. So if we dilute ourselves in trying to rearrange, for example, all this knowledge into our societal way of living, it will be impossible, because that thing cannot hold this. It can just not hold it. Personally, I have tried. I say it because I have tried, and we have friends, especially our Russian friend. He has been obsessed in previous years about trying to match, and he eventually, after trying wholeheartedly, having a
And
very
brilliant.
very bright mind, he gave up. He said, "No, it's not possible. We must just look at reality as it is and hold it. Otherwise, we will lose a lot of precious energy." I'm just expressing my experience and our Russian friend experience. We gave up. But anyway, all of us need to see it. Yes, it will be very difficult. Some elements won't be present to behold, and you will see the further we go, it is like trying to put a big thing into a little. I'm sorry to say it. It's like trying to put a big thing. It's not because it's Buddhism, because it's reality. Nothing to do with Buddhism. Reality, we cannot hold it into a small vase. So it will fall down. It will fall from the sides. That's how I felt in the past.
Being drenched or after.
Okay.
Okay.
Tea
Okay,
Time.
tea time. 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
concept. Let's look at the tea concept name.
So, after tea time,
Everybody has a tea, nice.
Yeah,
something.
delicious, thank you.
Okay, so we continue a
Yes.
little bit more. Okay, so now we have seen the subsequent mental process. Those are the what we have seen now, right now. The four types, four kinds are only mind door, because it does not have to do. The mind does not have to get new object from the five senses anymore. So it's processing the thing in the mind. So those are the subsequent mental process that happens after the five sense door process. No? So we finish with this, and now let's go to purely mind door process.
Mhm.
Okay, so for purely mind door process, the objects can be divided into two groups. It can be a clear object, and it can be a obscure or not so clear object. So here today we are talking about Kamawachara sense sphere, no? Still, so
Humans.
Humans, and also sense sphere, like the sense object or things like that. So what kind of object can it be if it is not directly
Taking from the external
from
world.
the immediate past experience, let's say. Yes, no, not immediately from the five senses. So what can it be? So it can be an ice cream that I ate yesterday, that I remember the taste of the ice cream yesterday. So it is no more, it's not a present object. So it is a sense object, but it is not here at the moment. So it can be something like that. Or it can be a piece of music that we have heard before. Or it is imagining in the mind. Or it can be also be some kind of a fantasy imagination that arises in the mind. It could be because I read a novel and then so this image appeared, or it can be some kind of whatever imagination that is that can happen only in the mind, not directly related to what we have just seen or heard or smelled, anything. So clear objects and not so clear objects. So in this case, and because it is a purely mind door process, so it actually does not have to deal with the present matter, no? Present outside matter. So in this case, we do not need to worry about the 17 mind moments. Yes, because the 17 mind moment is to fit the matter also, no? It is how long it takes for the mind to process the matter. But because now we don't have to deal directly with the matter, so it does not need to be 17. So forget about the number in this case. So now, also because there is no impact from the outside thing, so
Impingement.
so the past bhavanga also is not necessary from purely mind or process. So in this case, only it will be from bhavanga, stream of bhavanga, and then it will start shaking. So if the process is a clear object, what happens is that the stream of bhavanga continues, then the next bhavanga immediately shakes, and then it arrests, and then the mind or averting consciousness will happen, and immediately jhavana will happen, and then it will end with two tadaramana.
The mind tastes the thought. It's tasting the thought.
So here, no past bhavanga, it will start with the vibrating bhavanga, and it will end with two tadaramana. This is in the case when the object is clear. Now,
It is a full process. It is healthy, and I cannot say healthy. It's like a
Ideal.
complete or strong. The mind is conscious, is knowing and is tasting and experiencing the object clearly.
so in the case of not so clear object, sometimes last time we made an example. For example, in the case of you remember something, but not so clearly sometimes, or
What is
it
his
can
name?
be
What is
clear
his
or it
name?
can be not so clear. So different process will happen. So when the object is not so clear, tadaramana will not happen. Okay, so it will start with the vibrating bhavanga and finish with jhavana. And also in the case of a concept, although the concept may be very clear, tadaramana also will not happen, because tadaramana only happens with sense object only. Okay, so if it is a concept, then there is no tadaramana, even it is clear or not. Okay, so that's the two types of mental, purely mental process. In a comparison, will be something like that with a clear object, sense object, then we're starting from vibrating banga to tadaramana. And if the object is not so clear or it is not a sense object, for example a concept, then it will start with vibrating banga and ends only in javana. So that's briefly the two kinds of purely mind or mental process. There are actually more possibilities and more things, but for now, if we know these two, it's good enough. So the more other possibilities, we will leave it for the second round. Yeah?
Very
Okay.
good.
Okay, so now in the graphic for the mental process, five sense or process, and mind or mental process, we have already seen all these five door mental process according to how clear the object is, and then we have also seen the kamavachara sense sphere or sense sphere mental process, which can be divided into clear or not clear. That's the one we just saw. So next we are going to the apana, but meaning jhana and magga. But this is a little bit more complex, and we will need the information from previous chapters to be quite clear about previous chapters in order to proceed to this. So I think today we will just finish here because it is a good place to stop. Otherwise we will start something that we won't be able to finish. And so we still have some time, so we'll leave it for question and answer. If you have something.
So until now we've seen the different qualities of impact of the object and for the sensorial doors, and then the mental doors, and they're combining so we can process it, so we can see the concept and then name it,
Yes.
right? Or it changes with the audition. And when does the process start? When you start imagining based on what you've seen. It's part of the same.
After we know what we've seen, after those five of the idle process, then the processing until we name it or whatever, then after that then comes all those process, purely mind or process.
We
With
can
their own
imagine.
mind.
We
All
can
mind,
imagine
yes, all mind.
once we know what we are going to imagine with. So we first need to know. For example, there is
The full
girl,
information.
the girl and the iguana. There was there. You
Yeah,
remember
the
that?
fantasy.
First, you must know the girl, the mountain, the sky, and the iguana. Minimum.
Those already
Then,
processed.
after you already know monster, girl, and mountain, then the mind starts making up the story. And this
What are
has
they
only
doing there?
only mind processes, and we don't need we once we saw the picture, we can all make a story without looking at it. We start saying, and then the girl went, and it's all concepts. The girl went and then talked to the iguana or whatever.
And it's pure mind
It is pure
process.
mind. When you need some more information, then you turn. It is amazing. A child, we do that since child. We need more information. We already digested what was in the picture. Then we turn the page, and then new information. Now, moment to receive concepts. Things. Concept. Another monster, another boy, or whatever. Then a story, and then the mind goes into charming, munchy. Need more information, and that's how we deal. And the Buddha specifies how we are craving. The mind also eats. And the mind eats contact and novelty. The mind likes to new things generally. That is why one of the greatest dangers we have towards attachment and desire is because the mind by its nature don't like to think about things it already know. This is something that we have against our spiritual development and detachment. Because the mind likes novelty. Mind likes new. If you see, we want to see the new movie, but once you saw it, you want to see it later on when you forgot it. When you forgot it, then you want to see it again. But immediately, you don't want to see a movie after the other unless.
The same one three
Sometimes
three times in a row.
my cousin saw Dumbo like a million times, one after the other. Like this, it happens. It depends on attachment.
¿Por qué pasa eso con los niños? O sea, porque su mente
Not just.
procesa
Everybody.
diferente.
What?
Es que dices, o sea, ya lo tienes.
No, it's not. It's not. It's children, yes, but from 0 to 200 years. All of us do the same. We all like the new.
Yeah, but
In things, in thoughts, in process, in experience.
the children,
We have patterns. But the
Children
children
again,
especially.
the children
again,
especially
again.
like to repeat.
Yeah, they
Different
like to
times,
repeat.
and
To know
as
it
adults,
thoroughly
you don't
because
repeat
it's
that many
always-
times.
Because there are also, let's remember that there are
They're
many
also
many
learning
other
process.
processes happening. There is also emotional maturity. So, for example, we can get attached not to the story, but what the story makes us feel. So tell me again, tell me the story. Yes.
Mhm.
Mama, please tell me the story. Because the children feels
see the
nice
movie
and it's
again and
attached to the feeling,
The feeling.
not to the story. The story the children can repeat by himself, but he's attached to the maybe to the contact. Papa, tell me the story again. And feels that thing. So there are many complexities in the mind that can trigger. And let's remember that the children have a very complex development stages throughout their childhood. So at some moments they need new, at some moments they need establishing. New with novelty establishing, but actually we are on the same way, just in a different process. But it is the same. It's human consciousness.
Very interesting. So, when we see a not so clear object and the mind constructs the rest of the object so we can process it,
That's dangerous.
it's also happening all the time. It was kind of clear, but I saw it very clear because I saw a part, but the rest was imagined and constructed by my mind. So this is combination of these two processes going back and forth and giving us an alternative construct, not reality but construct.
Yeah, you just described the birth of prejudice, imagination, and a great possibility of ignorance. Because we are making things without being based on reality. That's very dangerous. We construct our own world, and here we have Donald Trump. It's another reality. It's another. He lives in another reality that he constructed out of the little information he got because and not just him, all of us. We are not interested in really going deeply onto the real thing and acknowledging all the sides to the story. So we make our own world, and unfortunately, we start making decisions based on that fantasy. Very dangerous because there are many fantasies. clashing together.
And also, although the eye, I'm talking about the processes, no? Although the eye really saw something, but in the mental process, it can already get crooked in the understanding of it, the perception. I see a rope, but I thought it was a snake. So perception already tricked us.
Our previous knowledge is tricking.
So it is not necessarily that if we see something, we always, even clearly or not, that we always know what it really is, because of perception also can make mistakes.
And there is a greater danger than that. It's knowing reality and not wanting to accept it and change it by will. Willful ignorance. I see it and I don't want to know. I know it and I don't want to know it. I will ignore it. That is the worst of all, because I already know the consequences of my acts, and I decide not to pay attention and still go forth. That is maybe the willful ignorance is maybe the worst, and it happens on that fantasy. That's why teacher says, come back to reality, stay here, acknowledge the whole thing, make peace with it, and move on. Do the best you can, but always beside reality. Reality. Otherwise, madness. That's madness. Very dangerous.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I have another question. Can I?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
And then Guillermo.
I don't know if you read about the molecule that the pineal gland segregates. According to science so far, when you're born and when you die, you segregate the DMT, dimethyltryptamine. So when this is happening, what kind of mental process is really going on there? Because it can also be synthesized from different types of barks and consumed by the human being and taken out. But what is really happening behind that in the mind?
The
What is
mental
really
process is running same way. The
Same
mental
thing.
process will not change its structure.
And the dying process also.
It doesn't deform the mental process?
Yes, the form of the mental process, the mind will continue working same. It's just perceiving a thing. The content that is perceiving is totally infused and colored by the influence of the chemical. Then he's imagining great things, and the emotions are really big because all the cascade of hormones and chemicals that are rolling on. But the mind won't change its structure because of that. It's just experiencing that in the same 17 process, and the mind still turning to the mind, and the eyes are still turning to the eyes. The only thing that the mind is getting reality, but something inside in the conceptual reality is flipped to hallucination. Then the mind feels elated, happy, and somehow nature has provided us with that safety button. Okay, you are dying. Okay, shut down all the nerve system. I mean the senses, so you don't experience pain. And many people especially those who almost died and didn't.
Yeah.
Even in NASA, when they do the astronauts that they're gonna send us
The
to the
gravity
moon, they
test.
make the gravity test,
Yeah.
and they almost die, but then they stop the machine and they release this DMT,
Yeah.
and they come out like, I love you, to the guy that I love you, everyone feel love and feel. They recall as a spiritual experience. Yes.
A near the
Before we
experience.
die, apparently our evolution has prepared us to die
In
at
peace.
least without pain. The only problem we see is there is a lot of hallucination on that numbness. So there are little possibilities at that moment to have a hold on where the
So
consciousness
when
is
you're
going.
dying, really, you lose contact with reality, or your reality becomes more present.
It depends on the individual. It depends on how the individual was trained, because apparently Tibetan masters they train their lives to die
into reality.
lucidly as much as possible, because we are already seeing that the death process has already 5 jhavanas and the mind is very weak. That's why it died. So apparently our teacher says that the last very process of the death it rolls on, which whatever actions we did in the past, it will just go with the impulse or
Cause
momentum.
and effect.
Cause and effect.
No way out of it.
No one has a hold on
Yeah.
such minute movement of nature.
Very interesting. Thank you.
For the death process, like in the last process of this lifetime, how it happens, it is in the video. You can also.
Oh, thank you so much. Great.
Yes.
We'll check it out.
Then you will be very
Okay,
interested.
we'll check it out.
And we have a talk I don't think it's in YouTube, talking about LSD and all the hallucinogens, and we
Okay.
spoke about this chemical,
Okay.
and it is it's a talk that we need to have the
seatbelt.
safe seatbelt on,
The
because
Six Flags.
but it's a Six Flags, but it's interesting.
Okay, thank you. Great.
If it is not, I will check. If it is not on YouTube, we pass you the video.
Thank you. Thanks. I would like that.
Did we put that on?
I'm not sure which one now.
The LSD, you remember?
Can you pass to Oliver?
Yes. It talks about
We're all
Interesting.
interested.
experiences with ayahuasca, peyote, LSD,
Okay.
the so-called pros and all the cons.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Oh.
the so-called pros and all the cons, based on research, based on chemistry.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
it is
Yeah,
is
we
nice.
would like to see.
It was a little bit
Sure.
controversial, especially by the people who was
attached
to
to the
it.
concept
To
of.
be honest, it was controversial. Many people was like, wow, all that happens to the body, but then yes, you
Yeah, we would like to see it
it's
for
it's
sure.
there.
Yo,
Mar-
tengo una chica que le dio un infarto a los 19 años, conocida, se murió 1 minuto, la revivieron. Y ella nos contó la experiencia de, sí se acordaba de verse arriba, como arriba de su cuerpo, fuera de su cuerpo. O sea, ¿cómo está ahí o no hay respuesta para eso? Pues, ¿cómo?
That's very common to be. While we can check online all the accounts of people, that's a very common thing that is expressed. Oh, I felt like I went out of body and things.
I would say that according to the Buddha's teaching, that a person come out from himself and see himself is not
It's
possible.
not possible.
No?
It's not possible. So
The
it
mind
might be
can
something
construct
the
it.
mind, something the mind is seeing those kind of images, but in reality, because mind arise and pass away, so it cannot go nowhere. It is so fast that it arise already pass away. So which mind go where? It is not possible. It arise already passed. So there is no one entity, or what we sometimes call a soul or something, that can come out and then come back in, and so that is not possible, because mind is a process, so it's just arise and pass. And also, as we saw Wotu, when we saw the basis, so mind arises depending on some kind of material, for a human being, depend on some kind of material quality that mind arise. So if it is disconnected with that material quality, also this mind cannot
It just
arise.
disconnect.
So according to the Buddha's teaching, it is not possible to come out of the body and go back in, and like this kind of experience it's
Technically, as you
Technically
mentioned
not
right now,
possible.
you said she almost died.
Mhm.
Yes, at that moment, yes. But to say technically, the teacher says the
Didn't
moment
die, yeah.
the moment that consciousness separates from the body, that's called death. The body, and there is no possibility for the mind to reconnect, because the
No.
consciousness has such a power that it travels and connects to the new life already. That it almost broke, and all these chemicals being released, and the mind did a special because of the chemistry that is happening, and because of the sensation is happening, and the experience itself, that it almost disconnect like a rubber band, and then it returned. Then the teacher says, yes, the mind can experience, the mind can create. It is impossible for the mind to go out of the body. Many people says, I was sleeping, I hypnotized or something, and I was seeing, assuring, I was seeing my body on top of it, and then teachers will say, the mind can do all these things, but technically, if the mind really goes out of the body, that you died. So yes, the mind can do many things, and it's proven by chemistry and functioning of the thing. I know there is a lot of issues around, but technically, based on the Buddha's teaching, it is technically not possible to die and return. It almost died, stay there with the consciousness in some kind of bhavanga or different kind of perception of the mental process, but if it is separated, it will move on. It is a lot of power. The consciousness is brute force.
Actually, it does not even move on to nowhere. It's just the potential be reborn in another place, because it arises here and then it passed away here.
It
and
is
then
dying
it arises
already.
in another
Arising and dying,
place
rising and
because
dying,
of
moment to
karma
moment.
in the next life, no? So it's not like the same person died and then this consciousness moved to another place. It does not move nowhere.
not linear.
Any consciousness arise and pass, arise and pass.
A ver, Marcus.
No, but it is true that people, or maybe it's a definition of death, but when the heart stops, usually we say a person is dead. Many times they are reanimated, like after 1 minute or 2 minutes or whatever, and so they're alive again. So in this,
Yeah, but the consciousness didn't left.
so this period,
Didn't stop.
The body stopped its function. For even ourselves, we can make a very simple experiment right now. Hold it. Keep it hold. Keep it hold. Hold it. We can hold it willfully for some time, and the body is actually not doing its function for a little while, but the consciousness is knowing, and then the consciousness will start pulling. Hey, breathe in, beat up, and then some kind of adrenaline will come, and something will push us.
yeah, but the heart was still beating all the time.
But also the heart can stop and your consciousness be there.
I will pass
Right?
you.
Is that what I understand?
Like in
Yeah,
your
so-
brain,
Consciousness
so-
still
There is still,
arises.
yes.
So we're actually not
it may be
dead.
minimal,
No, we're not
but
dead.
there's still
Even with
some-
your heart stops.
What dies is the mind. The body, when the body dies, it gets rotten. That is the only way we can know that a matter is dead, is when it already got rotten. As long as the matter is not getting rot, it hasn't died, and consciousness has just connection with the body, but it is totally running on itself. So people can be on a coma, and that's why they need to hook all the people doing. The body by itself is not doing. The consciousness is not pushing the heart to beat, but then we can push it even physically, manually from the outside, and keep the person alive for very long. Still, the consciousness is there and might come back, but no, the consciousness.
Yeah,
can't
well,
separate.
let's say continue to arise or not, because come back and go where
Yes,
it looks like there is an
Thank you.
entity that
Linear.
always
Thank you,
go
thank
like something that does not change,
Thank you.
no? This does not exist. So that's the core teaching of the Buddha,
Anatta.
soul, it does not exist. So there is no one entity like that. So it's like let's say in those cases, consciousness continue arising. Yes. Okay, and also like this is actually interesting, because in Asia there are many cultures that sometimes they thought the person is dead already, but after a few days and he wakes up, you know. So that's why like when people die, they sometimes leave the body for 7 days and then they don't move it,
To be sure.
just in case.
You really
And then after that, then they do cremation, or then they bury, because they could bury somebody and then they got knocked free,
Knock
you know.
free in the door.
Like,
They should do coffins with
See,
that.
actually they constructed
With a
coffins
button
with,
for
with
emergency.
that-
emergency.
with the emergency button.
Yes, they should.
Did that.
Yes.
Yes, they constructed coffins because of that fear that you might not be
Not
dead.
that, yeah.
So they
Oh.
constructed things with
Well,
the tube
walkie-talkie.
where you could speak. And
Can you give me a Bluetooth coffin, please?
With an iPhone.
It's really a bit related to the series of questions, because for me, when we say the mind and then consciousness, I want to really understand. I think consciousness of something like the intelligence that moves everything. It's like part of the ultimate reality is what I would think of.
Yes.
And then the mind is something that's more like our individual processor for all of our systems. And so necessarily the mind doesn't have to be really functioning for the consciousness to be in all of our cells. I don't know if that would be...
Maybe what you're referring, the teachers I suppose will answer in the following way. Maybe what you're referring as mind is what is called reasoning. But
Okay.
what makes the reasoning is consciousness. So
Okay.
mind and consciousness actually are interchangeable words. It are actually referring to the same. This is something that our culture, it takes time to chew that bone,
Okay.
because we generally have that sense of a soul or a something, or we don't call it a soul, but we say a consciousness, and later on we call a collective consciousness. But actually, technically, we are just threads. We all of us are threads of the same cosmic tapestry. But all the threads are individual. We make the whole the whole carpet.
Right.
We are all humanity, and we make the whole carpet. But if you look at, we can see this as a unity. Actually, when we look closely, actually it's individual threads. Our consciousness and our karma runs in that way. So we could say in terms of the teaching of the Buddha, it is only consciousness, or you can call it mind, but it is the same thing, and it's the thing that reasons. It's the thing that experiences and is being alive, and we are just looking at it in the microscopic level, all the variances it has. It can be in neutral, it can be perceiving, it can be seeing, listening, tasting, etc. It can be thinking about it, reasoning, and planting new seeds for future fruits to be harvested. Yeah,
I
yeah,
want to
absolutely.
say something.
Okay.
Sometimes in our language, English or whatever, sometimes we say the word consciousness as if it is like something very elevated, something more spiritual, or something like conscious or being conscious of something, no?
Yeah.
But in the Buddha's teaching, that's why translation is very difficult. Yeah, because there is no exact word that match what the Pali words, no? So actually what the Buddha said is only chitta and cetasika. So chitta is unit of consciousness, because consciousness is also not something that does not change, and always this consciousness is with us and all the time.
It's like atoms of consciousness, atoms of mind.
So
A unit of
it's-
chitta is an atom of mind that arises and passes away, same as matter.
Right.
So chitta arises together with cetasikas, and then it is a process how the, let's say, the mind in this way the mind functions, and the mind itself, what we call mind, is actually chitta and cetasika. What we call consciousness is also just chitta and cetasika. So it is basically the same thing, but they are not necessarily something so pure or so elevated, because there could be unwholesome mind,
Unwholesome
unwholesome
consciousness,
consciousness, anger, and also there could be wholesome consciousness with compassion or with other things. So it is just the process of it depends on the conditions and what happens, and if the person get angry, and that moment it is an anger consciousness that is happening. So it arises and passes.
Consciousness is neutral. Whichever elements are inside the plate, it will be the taste of
Color
the dish.
it.
Now, I will encourage you to see the first videos on the
Yes.
second chapter, because what you call right now mind, the thinking process, is actually two ingredients, vitaka and vichara. The ability that the mind has to turn to an object, hold it, and investigate it. That is called thinking. But actually, thinking can be divided into two ultimate reality ingredients, vitaka and vichara. And consciousness in itself is the holding of that thing. We can be thinking, we can be perceiving, or the consciousness can be in neutral as a natural
Different
process.
units.
Nothing really special about it. It's just a force of nature.
Yeah, now that we will be away for a few months, so it would be good if
Very
you have
good.
time
Yeah,
to
of course.
check out those videos,
That's really
because
great.
Yes,
then it will be more
many things
clear.
will be very clear.
Yes.
Okay, my dear family, so let's close. Let's recite together. Buddham Sasanam Chiram Titatu 3 times. Buddham Sasanam Chiram Titatu. Buddham Sasanam Chiram Titatu. Buddham Sasanam Chiram Titatu. That being, may the Buddha's teaching last for very long, for the benefit of many, many generations to come. It's a responsibility. May the seeds that arose today fall in fertile ground, so it gives plenty fruits for our final liberation. And with that said, we recite Idano Punyam Nibbanasa Pacheyo Kotu Idano Punyam Nibbanasa Pacheyo Kotu Idano Punyam Nibbanasa Pacheyo Kotu, with the intention that these fruits be beneficial for many beings, especially those who suffer more than us, if we know of someone who is having physical or mental hardships, we can remember them at this moment and we recite Idano Punyam Sabasatanam Vajimam Idano Punyam Sabasatanam Vajimam Idano Punyam Sabasatanam Vajimam Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If you can say Sangasa,
Sangasa,
Dema, Nibanasa, Vachayo. May this act of generosity towards the whole order, me as a representative, be one of the conditions for final liberation. And teachers generally say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu because of the joy of knowing that the people, by practicing detachment, so generosity, are attacking directly the source of suffering, which is attachment itself. So sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Generosity is a practice. Nos vemos el próximo domingo, queridos
Hasta el
amigos.
próximo domingo.